Let's bring in CBS News Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cordes, joining us now from Capitol Hill. So, Nancy, we've all had some time to peruse this tax legislation. People or lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have had a chance to really take a good look at it, because not all of them knew what it was going to be before it came out. So what jumps out at you, sort of the most controversial bits for both sides, for both Republicans and Democrats?
Well, first of all, big picture, outside analysts are also getting a chance to dive into the details. And what they say they're finding is that this plan would amount to a modest tax cut for many, but by no means all, middle-class families. It depends on a variety of factors: where you live, whether you take the standard deduction, whether you have high medical expenses. All of those things can impact whether you see a big tax cut, a slight tax cut, or even a tax increase. The most controversial parts of this plan so far for Republicans, and since they're not really trying that hard to get Democratic support, that's what really matters, is getting all Republicans on board, are two plans within this larger framework that would raise revenue. Number one, eliminating the deduction for state and local income taxes. You've got Republicans from high tax states like New York and California and New Jersey who say that that is going to hurt their constituents, that they rely on that deduction. Those same lawmakers are also frustrated by the fact that they were basically blindsided by a change to the mortgage deduction, which we had been hearing for months was not going to be touched. This is a little complicated, so stick with me here. But essentially what this plan would do is say, if you currently have a mortgage, there's no change in your deduction. You can deduct the first $1 million worth of mortgage of interest from your mortgage. But if you buy a new home, that number gets reduced from $1 million to $500,000. So again, lawmakers from these same states where property prices are very high say that that is going to hurt their constituents. GOP leaders say that they've put a provision into the plan that should help those constituents. It allows them to deduct the first $10,000 worth of property taxes. But you're still seeing something of a conflict there, and that's why they're really counting their numbers right now, trying to figure out how big this block of dissatisfied Republicans really is and whether they need to negotiate with them on some fixes before they can get to the magic number that they need to pass this in the House.
Yeah, that mortgage interest deduction, that's huge. I think homeowners across the country get real nervous when they hear that might be messed with. And like you said, maybe, $500,000 seems like a pretty sort of large or high threshold. But if you live in New York or if you live in LA, I mean, people know that even a modest house easily can go above $500,000. So what's next now in this process? Where do we go from here?
Well, Republicans want to move ahead as quickly as possible. They want to start debate in the House Ways and Means Committee next week. The goal is to try to pass this as quickly as possible so that you don't have outside groups like realtors, like home builders who have already been out there lobbying against the bill, getting more and more empowered, if you will. And so the goal is to pass it in the House. And then the Senate has already signaled that they may want to make some changes. And so then you go through that process in the Senate, keeping in mind that just like with health care, you really can only afford to lose a handful of votes in the House and an even smaller number in the Senate. So Republicans have to find near unanimity. Now, it may be easier to do with tax reform, or what many analysts say is really more like just a big plate of tax cuts. They say that there are far more cuts than reforms in this plan. That's something that a lot of Republicans can rally around. So it may be easier to do with taxes than it was with health care, but the devil is in the details. And then you've got the president sometimes freelancing off to the side, saying he likes things or doesn't like things, and that can sort of create new challenges. But essentially, GOP leaders say it is full steam ahead, and they want to keep this promise to not just individual taxpayers, but businesses by the end of the year.
Yeah, well, one thing that the president has made clear is he would really like to see this thing wrapped up as perhaps a little bit of a Christmas present to him. And so the clock is ticking for them to get the job done. Nancy Cordes, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.